Hello and welcome to Thursday's edition of Cracking the Cryptic. You can see I've got my Masters green jacket on today, or at least as close as I'll get to one. Of course, it's the start of the Masters in Augusta. A very exciting day if you're interested in golf, which I certainly am. Now, on screen, talking not about golf but about Sudoku, we have a puzzle by the constructor Qodec, making his debut on Cracking the Cryptic, and this is a very beautiful looking Sudoku. And I will tell you that Mark recommended this one to me today with a little bit of glee in his voice, because he told me it's also a very difficult Sudoku. So this is what we're going to try. Now, Mark asked me to give a shout out to the constructor Demono as well, who apparently helped Qodec to get this puzzle into its final form, which is the vision you see before you here. So well done to Demono for that, and well done to Qodec on making your debut. Now, before we get started on the rules of this one, let me read out a couple of things first. You've only got a day or so to enter our competition to win Cracking the Cryptic merchandise. All you have to do to win the merchandise is to basically solve Sam Kappelman-Lyons' latest brutal and brilliant, I would say, Sudoku. Let me just move the Sudoku down slightly. Is that a bit better? And yeah, then send in your entries to crackingthecryptic@gmail.com. And yeah, we're going to judge those entries according to logical content, logical reasoning, and artistic impression. And yeah, the winner will win some merch. And I'll whisper this because it might not happen, but we're hopeful if the technology allows it. We hope over the weekend that we will be able to release a video on Patreon, for those of you who are patrons of the channel over there, in which Sam himself shows you how to solve his puzzle. So that should be brilliant. Now, also, our Kickstarter book campaign is very nearly over. Can't believe it. And we've just got a couple of stretch goals left, both of which we think might be quite interesting. And the one we're working towards at the moment is a bit daunting as well, I have to say, because the idea is that, well, the book will contain, I think, 26 or 27 new puzzles by some of the world's best constructors. And Mark and I had already agreed, because of an earlier stretch goal, that we would make videos showcasing how to solve those puzzles. But now we've agreed that if we reach this next stretch goal, those videos will be blind solves of these puzzles. So it'll be exactly the same as a daily episode of Cracking the Cryptic. We will be faced with the puzzles for the first time, and we will have to try and solve them. Now, this is not without risk, because some of these constructors, people like Fistermaphel and Ahaupt, they aren't known for the ease of their Sudokus, but we will do our best. So it should be a lovely accompaniment to the book. So if you do want to see us do these blind solves, and obviously these videos will only be available to those people who sponsor the book and buy a copy, then do try and get us to that next stretch goal, and that will be very exciting for you guys at least. Now, also, those of you who watch the channel hoping for cryptic crossword content, we are going through a bit of a purple patch at the moment. Yesterday I released a video of me solving the comedian Dave Gorman's most recent puzzle, and that was very funny and also very good. But Mark is busy at the moment practicing hard for the Times Crossword Championship, which is coming up. I think it's not this weekend, it's next weekend. And he's released, for those of you who are patrons of the channel, a video of him solving 3 puzzles as quickly as he can on Patreon today. Now, this video is quite amusing, especially if you're into Schadenfreude, which I most certainly am. There is nothing quite as funny as seeing your friend fall off a roof. And for the first time in what must be at least a decade, and I kid you not, it's going to be at least a decade, Mark could not solve an ordinary Times crossword, and you get to see it. So yeah, if you're interested in seeing Mark flunk, and who isn't interested in that, get yourselves over to Patreon and enjoy that video. Anyway, that's enough of that. Let's get on to Qodec's puzzle. Let me read you the rules. What we've got is normal Sudoku rules apply. Digits along an arrow in the grid must sum to the digit in that arrow's circle. Okay, digits may repeat along an arrow, so that's completely standard arrow rules. Clues outside the grid give the sum of the digits along the indicated diagonal, and digits may repeat along a diagonal, so that's completely standard little killer Sudoku rules. So that's saying those cells, for example, sum up to 38. And you can repeat digits along these yellow cells, although not in the same box. So you can't make those two squares 3, for example, because they would be in the same box, and that will not obey the rules of Sudoku. But those 2 squares could absolutely be 3. Now, apart from that, what have we got? We've got cells with a grey circle, as 2 of those must be odd, must contain odd digits, and cells with a grey square must contain even digits. So those 2 squares. And that's it. So do have a go. The way to play, of course, is to click the link under the video. And with that, I get to play. Let's get cracking and see how we do. Now, as I stare at this, my eyes are drawn to 2 things straight away. The first is that these circles they do have arrows, but the arrows are very, very short arrows. So really what these circles around the middle box are telling us is that those 2 squares have to be the same digit. These 2 have to be the same digit, these 2 have to be the same digit, and these 2 have to be the same digit. Now, I've no idea why that's useful, or indeed if it's useful. It doesn't seem to be useful yet, but anyway, it was what I saw, so I thought I would tell you. Now, the other thing that strikes me as constrained immediately is this 47 diagonal, because it's too big to not be constrained. Yeah, so the maximum I can make three cells in the same box would be 7, 8, and 9, which is 24. So that means the minimum those 3 squares would be 6, 8, and 9, which is 23. So in fact, these 6 squares, it's either divided into 7, 8, 9 here and 6, 8, 9 here, or the other way round. So what we know straight away is that this diagonal consists entirely of digits 6, 7s, 8s and 9s. Now, is that helpful? It probably is, but I can't see how. 42. Oh, maybe the 42 diagonal is limited now because, oh, if I could click, it might be limited. Because these 2 squares, if these squares were 7, 8, and 9, for example, the maximum value of those 2 squares would be 11 if they were 5 and 6. So you'd have 11, that could be 9. It's 20, that's 22, which is, that's still got degrees of freedom. So the idea normally in little killer Sudoku is to reduce degrees of freedom on diagonals, and I'm not actually sure that this one does. So, what am I meant to do at the start of this puzzle? Anyone? So do I have to... So normally what I do when I get stuck on little killer Sudoku clues is I highlight all of them, and I can see that these long diagonals all hit the same boxes of the Sudoku. So let's actually do that and see if that tells us anything. It creates 4 dice 5s in the grid, look. What do these add up to? We've got 47, 40, so that's 90, 1980, 170. Aha! Okay, that's too close to 180 for it to be coincidence. Ah, yeah, okay. There might be something going on here, I think. So what I'm thinking is that we ought to be able, mathematically, to link these purple cells, which sum up to close to 170. They don't sum to exactly 170 because they double count these central cells. You know, this 42 is summing those, but this 47 is summing these. So you can see that we're counting this one twice. So, but the fact is they are close to 180. Now, why am I talking about 180? Let me show you. These 4 boxes here sum up to 180. Now, if that is news to you, the reason is that, let's look at this box. These highlighted cells, if we look at the finished solution to the puzzle, we'd see the numbers 1 to 9 in this box, obviously. If you add up the numbers 1 to 9, you get 45. 45 is the most important number in any Sudoku involving arithmetic because it allows us to do tricks So if I've got 45 here and I've got 3 more lots of 45, I know all of these highlighted cells sum to 180. And what I ought to be able to do is to therefore do some maths to compare the purple squares with those 4 boxes. So the reason I'm interested that 180 and 170 are close to one another is I can see that to convert my 170 into 180, I'm going to have to add a lot of squares. I'm going to have to add 16 squares of value, and I think deduct these 4 squares. Now, 4 squares is bigger than 1 square as a rule. In fact, the value of 4 squares is always greater than the value of whatever I put in the 1 square, no matter what I put, because these must sum up to at least 10, and the maximum I could make the 1 square would be 9. So there's definitely a constraint here. Let's put it like that. Now let's just double check my arithmetic, because let's double check my arithmetic. Because the 180 is equal to the purple cells plus these cells, isn't it? So let's make those green. So let's remember this. So 180 equals purple plus green. But 170 is equal to purple plus these squares, because we're double counting those squares. Right, okay, so what we need to do, what I'm going to try and do in my head, which I'm notoriously bad at, is some simultaneous equations. So if we know that 170 is equal to the purple plus the middle squares, and we know that 180 is equal to purple plus the green squares, then if I equate the purples to each other, I've got 180 minus green. Yeah, that's right. 180 minus green is equal to 170. Now, which way round is this? 170 minus these middle ones. Now so the way my instinct was correct, therefore. What we've got therefore is that the greens minus these middle cells, let's colour those a different colour, the greens, so green minus blue is equal to 10, and that must be restricted. So greens minus blue equals 10 because there are so many greens. So if I make the greens as small as I can, let's make them 1, 2, 3 and 4, you can see this is getting tricky already, because that means if these were minimums, I'd have 40 minus blue equals 10, which means that blue would have to equal 30, which the problem with this is that I could still increase the greens. If I increase the greens, the reason is the blues don't have to all be different. If the blues all had to be different, we would be cooking with gas here. Because the maximum I could make them, if they were all different, would be 30. But because you could, then what could you do? You could go 9 here, and then you can't put 9 here, but you could put 9 here. You could go 8 and 8. So you could actually make these equal 34. Which means that you could make these equal 44, which means there are degrees of freedom, which is not what we're after at all. Bobbins. Oh dear. This is very clever. This is very clever of Qodec. Oh, I love that. Look. Oh, that's really gorgeous. Look. Let's imagine you try and put 2 9s into these 2 squares. You can't, because it breaks the middle. Because you can't now put 9s in those squares, and that means you have to put a 9 in one of those squares, which are arrow squares. So that would mean that you'd have to put a 9 in one of these 4 squares. but whichever one was the 9 would be seen by one of these 9s. It doesn't matter, you know, every single one of these 9s is obviously seen by one of those 9s. So you can't actually repeat a digit in the blues. Now that must be important because yeah, that's really clever. That's really clever. You cannot repeat a digit in the blue. And if you can't repeat a digit in the blue, the maximum value of the blue is 30. And therefore I have got to make sure, that the greens don't add up to more than 40. And the only way of making sure the greens don't add up to more than 40 is to make them absolute minimums. That is a beautiful, beautiful break-in. So I'm already impressed with this puzzle. What we can do therefore is say with certainty these blues are 6, 7, 8 and 9. The greens are 1, 2, 3 and 4. Now if the greens are 1, 2, 3 and 4, that means these cells must all be 1, 2, 3 and 4. That's interesting again. That's interesting again from a geometric perspective, because now you can see these 4 squares actually all have to be different because they are repeating in the central box of the Sudoku. So if you try and make any of these cells the same, you get a repeat in box 5. So those squares are different, which is another consequence of these little short arrows. Now, still not got a digit in the grid, I'm noticing. No, I have. I have got a digit. Ha ha, that is a digit. That is a naked single, isn't it? It must be a naked single from what I've just said. Because these are all different, and because these are all different, this cell sees 1, 2, 3, 4, 6, 7, 8 and 9. So it's a 5. That's really very lovely. I feel like giving myself a round of applause for that. I'm not very good at spotting naked singles, and that is a beautiful one. So these squares, therefore, must be 6, 7, 8, and 9. I'm going to put those in. The 5, look, in this box is going to have to be in one of those cells because it can't be on this diagonal. So I'm not sure actually what I'm meant to do here. I think I'm going to highlight all the purples. So the purples all have to be 5, 6, 7, 8 and 9. Now that means that 5 in that box must be on the diagonal as well. Don't think that's going to matter enough for the 38 though. The 38 is too middling. 6. Well, I mean it's not. I don't think there's enough degrees of freedom limited on the 38 diagonal. Now, this puzzle actually has an A-helped feel to it, doesn't it? Because it feels like we're having to use all of the various clues to even get anywhere. I'm looking at these clues now, actually, these arrow clues. You can see these arrows hit only green cells in their boxes. So given that we know the greens in total sum to 10, these arrow cells, these must be equal to 10 minus whatever goes in here. So these are 6, 7, 8. These have all got to be 6, 7, 8, and 9. Because they've all got to equal 10 minus a digit that's a maximum of 4. So we've almost got quadruples, look, but not quite. We've almost got quadruples everywhere, but not quite. Oh, do I have to do the... now this might have just taken a crazy turn, this puzzle. I was thinking about these rows and columns, and that got me wondering about that. Now, why is that interesting? Well, if you've never seen what I'm about to show you before, prepare for your jaw to have to be picked up off the floor. This is the Fistermaphel ring, and I'm just wondering if it is relevant in this puzzle. And before I go into it, do you mind if I just take a minute to stare at this, because I don't want to go through Fistermaphel's theorem unless there is a point to it. So is it something to do with the little killer clues? Aha, yes it is. Ah, good grief. Right, okay, this is absolutely, it's absolutely brilliant. This is absolutely brilliant. Okay. Good grief. I mean, the thing about this, what we're about to do here, is this often, I've seen this used to break into puzzles at an early stage, but it definitely doesn't feel like this is the early stage. I'm 20 minutes into the puzzle I'm having to do this. This is startling. But now I'm probably going to get rid of the colours, I think, so I don't get too colourful. I have to click delete, don't I, not to make a mess of things. Right, so what I'm going to do is I am going to highlight these 2x2s on the edge of the grid. And we are going to talk about a geometric pattern discovered by the constructor Fistermaphel, and this is a thing of great beauty. I've done a number of videos on this, so I'm not going to spend too long on it, but I will try and give you the 1-minute version of why what I'm about to say is true. So the digits that appear in the blue cells here are identical to the set of digits that appear in the red ring. They are identical. These 16 cells here contain 16 digits. Those 16 digits must appear as an exact set in the blue cells as well. And this is true for any Sudoku. Now the reason is to do with, what's the best way of explaining this? If I was to say to you, how would you define the Fistermaphel ring in terms of these columns 3 and 7 and rows 3 and 7? How could we define the red squares? Well, one way of thinking about it would be to say that we've got one complete set of the digits 1 to 9, because this is a complete row, minus whatever's in those dominoes. Now, we've also, in this row, we've got one set of the digits 1 to 9, minus whatever's in those dominoes. And then we could look at column 3, and we could go, well, it's one set of the digits 1 to 9, minus what's in these dominoes. But you'll notice here that I double counted now these two squares, because these two squares here appeared both in row 3 and in column 3. So, well, and similarly this one here is in row 7 and column 7. So we're going to have to bear that in mind. Similar thing for these. So what we've now managed to show, if we think is that the Fistermaphel ring is equal to 4 sets of the digits 1 to 9 minus whatever is in these yellow dominoes minus one lot of whatever's in those squares, because we've double counted them. Okay, so let's remember that the Fistermaphel ring is equal to 4 sets of the digits 1 to 9 minus the yellow dominoes minus one lot of these corner squares. Now, how would we define the blue squares if we were going to try and do that? Now this time I want to try and define what the blue squares are according to their boxes. So you can see that the blue squares in this box are exactly equal to the set of digits 1 to 9 minus what's in the yellow squares, the yellow dominoes, minus that square there. Does that sound familiar? in this box, the blue squares are exactly equal to the set of digits 1 to 9 minus these yellow squares, these 2 yellow dominoes, minus whatever's in that square. So hopefully you're seeing what's happening here. The red ring, it contains the set of the digits 1 to 9 minus the yellow dominoes minus these squares, and the blue squares can be defined identically. So they must be identical. And this, I think, is what we're meant to do this puzzle, because if we think about what this means, you can see that in the Fistermaphel ring here, in the red ring, there are an awful lot of high digits. There are only 4 digits that are 4 or below, and those digits are all different. So these 4 squares are the digits 1, 2, 3 and 4, and then the rest of everything has to be a 5 or higher. Now let's look at these clues around the grid. We've got 6, 9, 8 and 7 here. Now, how are we going to fill these 4 diagonals? And I think what Qodec wants us to appreciate here is that it's not possible for any of these diagonals not to contain one of the digits 1, 2, 3 and 4. Because if we try to make any of these totals work without using one of these 4 digits, we'll add up to too many, because the only digits we've got to select from, if we can't use one of these highlighted squares, are digits that are 5 or higher. So if I try and put digits that are 5 or higher into those 2 squares, I will reach a total of 10 at least. Now, therefore, if I need to put at least one of the digits 1, 2, 3 and 4 into each of these 4 sums, I must allocate those 4 digits 1 per sum. And that's all we need to know. If I have to put one of the digits 1, 2, 3 and 4 into each of these, how on earth can I make that work, given that I can't put more than one into any of them? So if, for example, I tried to put 4 in here, I'd have to put a 3 in there. I would have used 2 of the digits 1 to 9 on this sum, and therefore one of the others would have to contain none of the digits 1, 2, 3 and 4, and it would have to be greater than 9. So the only way this is going to work, I think, and unbelievably, is if I pair up. The only way this can work is if I pair each one of these up with a 5, isn't it? This is going to have to be 1 and 5. This will have to be 2 and 5. This will have to be 3 and 5. And this will have to be 4 and 5. And that means I have allocated the digits 1, 2, 3 and 4 to each of these diagonal sums. And I've done it in a way that requires 4 5s. Now, can I get 4 5s in the Fistermaphel ring? Yes, I can. Yes, and that's a relief. So you can see the ring. I mean, you can never put more than 4 of a digit in this ring, but we can get 4 5s. But we've got 4 sides of a square here, so we need each side to contain a 5. Now, looking at this side, there's only one place to put a 5. It's there, so that's got to be a 5. Therefore, that can't be a 5. Now there's only one place to put a 5 on this diagonal, which must be here. Now that's not a 5. Now, can we go further? Yeah, we can delete 5s from those 2 squares. We can delete, we've already done the deleting over there. So can we keep going with this, or do we run out of room for the 5s? Oh no, we don't run out of room, because I've still got to put a 5 on this side of the square, and it can't go here for some reason. Oh, it can't go here because of the 47 clue. Good grief. So this must be a 5, and therefore this must be a 5, and we get all the 5s done. What a puzzle. Right, okay. Okay, so I've done all the 5s. Well, I haven't done all the 5s. I've done some of the 5s. I've approximately placed all 9 5s. So what do I do now? Gosh, I mean, this is fascinating, isn't it? This is absolutely fascinating. I know what I could do. These Fistermaphel, these cells all have to appear on the Fistermaphel ring. And if we look round now, we know that each of these squares must be 6, 7, 8, and 9 because they are the only cells left on the Fistermaphel ring. Now that's in a square which is even, so that's got to be a 6 or an 8. Same is true of that. So this has got to be a 7 or a 9. Same, that's got to be a 7 or a 9. Unfortunately, I don't think that tidies up the puzzle, does it? So what do I do now? Do I have to... Oh, I know what might work. The 43 diagonal now can't have a 5 on it. Yeah, this is interesting. This is very interesting because if it can't have a 5 on it, then I need to be using digits that are... Well, this is so obvious what I'm about to say, but I will say it anyway. I have to be using digits that are 6 or higher on this diagonal. So how can I do this in a way that doesn't break the puzzle? Well, if this was 6, 7, 8, for example, that would be 21. These would have to add up to 22, which would be 6, 7, and 9, because we can't use a 5. So you can never make either of these sums equal to 7, 8, 9 anymore, because then the other one, if we try 7, 8, 9 on the diagonal, that would be 24. You'd have to have... You can't make 19 from the other side because you'd need a digit lower than a 6 in order to make 19 because 6, 7, 8 always adds up to 21. So this is weird. So this is exactly divided, therefore. Yeah, you can't even use 23 because 20 is too low for 6, 7, and 8. So this diagonal is a 6, 7, and an 8, and a 6, 7, and a 9. So both, there must be a 6 and a 7 on this diagonal, so that's not 6 and 7. And there must be a 6, 7 on this diagonal, so that's not 6 and 7. Not 6 or 7, sorry. Well, that might be helpful. Is that helpful? So, I mean, it doesn't seem actually to be massively helpful. I have to say, it's qualified this digit on this diagonal by removing the option of 6 and 7. Is that? So now we've got 28 for these 4 squares. 28. But the minimum I could make those two would be 13. So if I made those 13, the maximum I can make these is 50. Okay. Yeah, that is interesting. So if you can see the minimum those two squares can add up to is 13. So the maximum these could ever be is 15. They must be 15 or less. So you can never put 8 or 9 now in this square because that will obviously therefore add up to more than 15. So we can remove 8 and 9 from here. And okay, so the minimum value now for this side of the equation is 14. So the maximum value for this side is also 14. That's nice. So I can remove 9 from both of those. You can't put 9 on this diagonal anymore because the 9 would have to partner up with a 6, and that would make the total too high. So that's bizarre, though. It doesn't seem to be doing anything. Am I missing a trick here? I think I am. So all we've managed to do is slightly constrain some of these digits. And the same is true down here, isn't it? This becoming an... So we managed to remove 6 and 7 from this square. Has that done something to the 42 diagonal? So these two are taking it. So we need these 4 squares to add up to 32. That is quite high, actually. That is quite high. I will give it that. So the minimum, so if this added up to 13, for example, these would have to add up to 19, so that's totally impossible. If, on the other hand, this is maximal, if that added up to, that can't add up to 9 and 8, can it? Ah, that's the point. That's the point. This diagonal, this 47 diagonal, always has an 8 and a 9 in it, in each box, so that can't be 8. Sorry, I should have appreciated this before. This, whoopsie, that can't be 8 or 9 either, because the 8 and the 9 have to be on this diagonal to make the 47 possible. So this is lower than I was thinking. So let's come back to this now. The maximum value of those two squares is 16. So the minimum value of these two squares is 16. Aha! I say aha, it's not actually that brilliant. It means I can remove a 6 from that one. Uh-oh. So if that's 6 and that's 15, this would have to be 17, which is quite plausible. Goodness me. Okay. So what exactly am I meant to do? I feel like I probably haven't appreciated something about one of these diagonals. So this one, oh, I know what it is. I know what it is. It's this square. Oh, good grief. Wow, okay. Okay, this is seriously clever. This guy is very, very good indeed. Yeah, okay. Let's think about how this diagonal works. We know that it's one side of it will be 6, 7 and 8. I don't know which one of these will be 6, 7 and 8, but one side of it is 6, 7 and 8. Now, in whichever diagonal is 6, 7 and 8, this square will be a 9. But in the other diagonal, we know we need 6, 7 and 9. So let's say this one is 6, 7 and 9. That will be an 8 in that case. So this 8, 9 pair here it's as if they're in the same column. They can't both be the same digit. Now, if these can't both be the same digit, this square can't be a 9, because if it's a 9, both of those squares would be 8, and this 43 would become impossible. So this is a 7, which is absolutely stunning. So that's not 7 anymore. That's not 7 anymore. Now I'm just wondering if that pattern is repeating in the grid, because I've seen we've got, it is, oh, this is just gorgeous. This is, I should have seen this earlier, but I didn't, sorry. But look, in this diagonal, we know we've got 23 and 24. Again, we don't know which way round it goes, but we don't care. Because let's say this one was 7, 8 and 9, that will make this a 6. That will make this one 6, 8 and 9, which makes that one a 7. So again, this 6, 7 cannot be the same digit, which means this one can't be a 7, because it would force both of those to be a 6. So this must also be a 9. So we can remove some 9s from the real estate. Yeah, look, where does 9 go now in this box? It can only go here. It can, oh, whoopsie, we can remove 9 from this cell, remove 9 from this cell. We can probably do more. I've just got to spot how to do it. Let's have a look. Let's have a think about this. So that one can't be 9 now. So have we taken this as far as we can take it? Maybe we have. Or maybe there's another deduction we can make. I really like the idea of using these pinch points, but I think in order to use them fully, we're going to have to be able to get another elimination or two in these boxes here and here, or maybe up here as well. Is that right? I've got a 6-8 pair in row 9 of the grid. That would be interesting. Yeah, that's caused by getting this 9, wasn't it? I eliminated a 9 from this square. That's revealed a 6-8 pair in the bottom, which makes that a 9. So we can get rid of some more 9s. This is, I can see this is going to be important actually, because now all of a sudden, look, this diagonal is now 6, 7, 8, which means this diagonal must be 6, 7, 9, and therefore can't. That's right. Yeah, it must be 6, 7, 9. It can't include an 8, so that must be the 8. We can remove some 8s from the grid. We've got a 6, 7 pair here. We can remove the 6 and the 7 there, the 6 and the 7 there. Is that as far as we're able to take this? I don't think it is. I just think I've got to spot another of these tricks. Yeah, where does 9 go? In row 5 of the grid. It can only go there, I think, because we've got this 6, 7, 8 triple going on. So that's a 9. That's an 8. That's not 9 anymore. That's not 8 anymore. Still don't know whether this is 23 or 24. It could still be either, but we've now got a 6, 7 pair here. So this becomes an 8. That becomes a 6. Good grief. This becomes a 7. That's nice because that makes this one add up to 23. So this one has to add up to 24. So this one must be 7. This must be 6. That's a 9 over here. That's not 6 anymore. I hope you'll forgive me for doing this slowly and very methodically. I am trying to not make mistakes here. This must be a 6 by Sudoku. That's a 9. That's a 7. That's an 8. That's a 6. That's a 7. This 7 sees that one, so that 8 and 7 gets resolved. That 8 and 6 gets resolved. That's not 6 anymore. That's not 6. This must be 6 in the corner. My goodness me, what an idea this is. 8 can be removed from that square. Let's get rid of it. 8 can be removed from this square. And I've got all my dice filled, look. That can't be 6 because of the 6 above it. That can't be 6. This one can't be 7 or 8. And wow. And still it's not falling over. I still don't know how to disambiguate these 1s and 5s. How long have I had for? Oh my goodness, this is a long video. I'm sorry about that, but there's a lot to do in this puzzle. I know what I could do now. Look, this is a 6 or a 7, and this is summing those 3 squares. Now I can do that that's either 1, 2, 4 or 1, 2, 3. So there's always a 1 and a 2 in these three squares. So this is not 1 or 2. And that, look, has an impact on the middle square. So 7, 8. Oh, this is, oh, good grief. This is beautiful. I hadn't realised this, but because 5 is not possible on this arrow, the options for 7 and 8 here are 1, 2, 4 or 1, 3, 4. So there must be a 1 and a 4 in this triple, which means there's no 1, 4 here, which means there's no 1, 4 here. Now 8, 9 presumably is working the same way. Yeah, if it's 9 it has to be 2, 3, 4. If it's 8 it has to be 1, 3, 4. So there is always 3 and 4 in these three squares. So there's no 3 or 4 here, there's no 3 or 4 here. This one, oh good grief, yeah, it's the same. Even 6 and 9, it's possible to find 2 digits that must be in the sum of 3 cells, because it's either 1, 2, 3 or 2, 3, 4. So there's always a 2 and a 3 here, so there's no 2 or 3 here, there's no 2 or 3 here. And you could see, look, we end up with different pairs in these corners of box 5. Now we can go, I think we can go further here, because look, this 2, 3, for example, if this is 2, we know this will be 2, but we know that this triple here always has a 2 or a 3 on it, because this is the 1 or the 4. So in fact, this square, and this square must contain the same digit. So actually I'm going to colour those in. This square here must be a 2 or a 3. Now I wonder if we can do that with, maybe we can do it with all of the other pairs. So if this is 1, and yeah, look, oh, this is just beautiful. Good grief. It does, it always works. Wow. So the 1 and the 2 here, you can see, are always in this triple. So this 1 and 2 have to go together with that cell, which means this square has to be a 1 or a 2 and isn't a 3 or a 4. And I think it works the same way throughout. So I think you can see this square has to make an appearance. Whatever this square is, it's the same as this square, and it has to make an appearance in one of these three squares. So it's going to have to be that one. So those three squares are the same colour. And we should be able to do the same here. So 3, 4, 3, 4 have to be there. That's the same colour. I'm running out of colours, but we're making a very pretty pattern, which is befitting this beautiful puzzle. Sorry, let me just... that square there has got to not be... That's got to be a 2, a 1 or a 4. And this square, 3, 4, that's got to be not a 1 or a 2. Now, have we... Still... It's still not done, is it? What would be interesting? I'm just wondering, look, if I can get a 2, if putting a 2 in here puts a 2 in there, that will break this, because then I couldn't put a 2 in either of those squares. So what is the consequence of, if that's all 2s, 4, what does this square become? Yeah, it doesn't work. Yeah, if you go 2s on these two squares, this has to be a 1 and this has to be a 4. You can see that puts this as a 3 and this as a 2, and that breaks. And I bet you this breaks no matter what digits you choose. well, no, it's not going to break. It's obviously not going to break if I choose 3s in these squares, but it's going to be the same principle each time you do it. So if the correct digit is 3, 4, 1, yeah, so if we choose 1s here, it should also break, and it'll break here. So let's just see. If this is 1s, you get a 4 here, a 4 here, you get a 1. Yeah, it's gorgeous. It's gorgeous. The moment this becomes a 4, the only place that 1 can now go here is there, so that becomes a grey 1. That forces this to be a grey 1. And now look, you've got 1 here and here, looking at those 2 squares. So it's just very, very clever indeed. It really is. But what we've proved is that these cannot be 2. This is not. This is 3, 4, 1, 2, 2, 1, and I think. I'm not going to say what I was about to say. It would be foolhardy to think that this puzzle was cracked. But I am hoping now, at least, we might be on the right track to finishing the puzzle. That's got to be a 4, obviously. That finishes that's a 3. Let's remove 3 and 4 from those 2 squares. That becomes a 1. That becomes a 2. That finishes the 1 and the 5. This 5 is going to go all the way around the grid. And it does. That 4 fixes the 1 here. That can't be 3. I simply don't believe what's that 3 is fixing that 2 and 4. That square there, first of all, has got to be a 2, 3, 4. This one is now resolved by the fact that that adds up to 6. That's a 9. That's all looking good. That's 3, 2, and 4. This is 8, so this should be 1. We should be able to do this actually. 4. These have got to be 1 and 3, so the 3 and the 1, that all looks like it's working. And this will be 7, and this will be 2, 4, and 1, which is working. Okay, we must be nearly done. We've got 7 digits in column 1, so we need 2 and 3. Ah, yeah, 2 here. So that's 2, that's 3. 7 digits in this column. We need 1 and 4. Again, the 4 and the 1 complete it. Let's look at the bottom row where we need 1 and 2. We're going to find a 1 here. The symmetry is sort of starting to shine, isn't it? So now we've got 3 and 4 into those squares. Again, all good. We can do that. Now we've got 7 digits in this column. So what do we need? We need 2 and 9, I think. So that must be the 9 because there's a 2 here. That finishes the 8 here. That gives us a 3 into this square. That must be the 9. That must be the 6. This square should be a something. A 1, I think. That's got to be a 7. These 2 squares have got to be 4 and 8. Yeah, it still looks like it's working. 8, 4. I'm taking my time. I don't care what anyone says. This is not an easy puzzle. Now that should be a 7, and I think I filled it in. And I'm going to click. Yes, I did it. Wow, that is a behemoth of a puzzle. My goodness me. It is really, really good as well, though. That is one of, I mean, so many Sudokus that we do on this channel where I get to the end of it and I just think, that was a masterpiece. But it happens day after day. That one from Bataku the other day was a masterpiece in a different way. But Qodec, what a debut. What a beautiful Sudoku. And it kept giving, and it kept being hard as well. And, you know, the break-in was hard. Then the Fistermaphel ring was hard. And then all the stuff you had to do to sort of narrow down these diagonals was interesting and hard. Yeah, just gorgeous. Loved it. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Longer video. I'm sorry, my brain wasn't clever enough to do it more quickly. But yeah, these things happen. And yeah, come back later on for another edition of Cracking the Cryptic.